The metal walls shook as the ship connected to the station. Daesung held onto the rail and looked out the small window. The station was huge, floating in space around a frozen moon. Its surface was covered in dents and marks from old battles. Lights flickered across it like dying stars. The ship stopped moving. Daesung picked up his bags and walked to where the supplies were stored. Large gray boxes sat in rows, each one marked with Earth symbol. Inside were food packets, medicine, and other things humans could send. It wasn't much. Earth was still fixing itself after years of war. But it was something. The door opened with a loud hiss. Cold air rushed in, making Daesung pull his coat tighter. He stepped into the station's hallway. People were everywhere. Not humans, aliens, tall ones, short ones, furry ones, scaly ones. They sat against walls, lay on the floor, huddled in corners. Their eyes followed him as he walked past. They looked tired, hopeless. A tall creature made of crystal came toward him. It was nearly 8 feet tall, and its body glowed with colored lights from inside. The lights changed patterns, which was how it talked. A small device on its chest turned the lights into words. "You are the human with supplies," the device said. The voice had no emotion. "Yes, my name is Daesung. I have the list of everything we brought. Earth sends garbage." The crystal being's lights turned red. "Other worlds send real help. This is an insult." Daesung felt anger rise in his chest but kept his voice calm. "We sent what we could. Our people are still rebuilding. Excuses." The being turned away. "Follow me. You work in Sector 7 now." They walked through the station. The halls got smaller and darker as they went down. The air got colder too. Daesung saw more children here. Small creatures with fur, scales, and feathers. They watched him with big eyes as he passed. The crystal being stopped at a large door. "The nursery. You stay here until your time ends." "Wait, I'm a medic and supply manager. Shouldn't I be helping with, 'You are needed here'?" The lights flashed angry red. "Maybe caring for worthless children will teach your kind some respect." The door slid open. The crystal being walked away, its footsteps echoing down the hall. Daesung stood in the doorway and stared. The room was massive but felt crowded because of how many children filled it. They were everywhere. Small furry things sleeping in piles. Reptile-like younglings under heat lamps that buzzed and flickered. Bird creatures sitting on broken perches. The noise was almost too much. Crying, chirping, clicking, whistling. All of it bouncing off the metal walls. A young woman rushed past carrying blankets. She stopped when she saw him. Her eyes went wide with relief. "Oh, thank God. Please tell me you're here to help." She spoke Korean, which surprised him. "I'm Daesung. They sent me to work here." "You're human?" "I've been alone here for 3 weeks." She looked exhausted. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair pulled back in a messy knot. The other workers left. They said the upper levels needed them more. Daesung looked around again. "How many children?" "I stopped counting at 80. More come every day." She put down the blankets and rubbed her face. "Most lost their families in the war. Some got separated during the escape. A few species look after their own, but the rest—" She waved her hand helplessly. "Nobody wants them." A small creature came closer to Daesung. It looked like a fox but with silver fur that seemed to shine. Its ears were huge and pointed. 3 tails swished behind it nervously. The creature stared up at him with bright blue eyes. "That's Vix," A1 said softly. "He's been here longest. His whole planet got evacuated. His parents put him on a ship but couldn't get on themselves. He hasn't talked since." Daesung knelt down slowly. The creature backed away 1 step, then stopped. They looked at each other. Daesung could see it shaking. "Hey," Daesung said quietly. "I won't hurt you." Vix tilted his head. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into a group of other small beings under a thermal blanket. Hayone sighed. "The temperature dropped again last night. The systems down here are breaking. We don't have enough blankets and the heat lamps keep dying." She looked at him with hope in her eyes. Did you bring supplies? Yes, mostly cold rations. Food packets made for humans. Daesung stood up. I need to check if they're safe for other species. I'll take anything right now. Hey, one started walking to the back. The food machines here only work sometimes. Yesterday they gave out something that made the bear-like cubs sick for hours. They spent hours unloading Daesung's supplies. The cold ration packs were small and wrapped in silver. Each one had enough food for one human meal. They didn't need heating or cooking. You could eat them straight from the package. While they worked, more human staff arrived. Taejin was tall and quiet, handling organization and planning. Laura was young with quick hands and a fast smile, helping with whatever was needed. They had been at the station for weeks, but worked in other areas. They moved us here today, Taejin explained. Said the upper levels had too many workers. Laura laughed bitterly. They just don't want to deal with the nursery. Everyone thinks it's the worst job. Well, it's our job now, Daesung said. He looked at all the small beings, watching them with careful, hungry eyes. So let's do it right. Night came fast. The lights dimmed throughout the station to copy day and night cycles. In the nursery, the children started settling down. Some curled up in nests made from scraps of cloth. Others piled together to stay warm. A few sat on high places with their heads tucked under wings. Daesung sat against a wall. He was exhausted. Hey, one sat next to him, her eyes already closing. Tomorrow we give out the rations, he said quietly. We'll figure out what's safe for each species. What if we run out? Hey, one asked without opening her eyes. Daesung didn't answer. He didn't have a good answer. Instead, he watched Vix curl up alone in a corner. The three tails wrapped around the small body. Even from far away, Daesung could see the shaking. He stood up and grabbed a thermal blanket. Walking slowly, he approached Vix. The creature's eyes opened. Watching him come closer with fear and maybe hope, Daesung laid the blanket gently over the small form. Vix didn't move, just stared up at him. It's okay, Daesung whispered. You're safe here. He walked back to his spot against the wall. When he looked back, Vix had pulled the blanket tighter, but was still watching him. The shaking had stopped. It was a small thing. One blanket, one gesture. But in that cold room full of forgotten children, small things felt huge. Small things were all they had. And sometimes, small things were enough to make someone feel less alone. The alarm woke everyone at once. A loud, harsh sound filled the nursery. Red lights flashed on the walls, painting everything the color of blood. Children started crying immediately. Their voices mixed together into one sound of pure fear. Daesung jumped up before he was fully awake. His training as a medic took over. Hey, one was already moving through the room, picking up the smallest children and trying to calm them. Taejin ran to the control panel by the door. Biora started counting to make sure everyone was there. What's happening? Daesung shouted over the noise. Taejin's face went pale as he read the screen. Environmental system failure. Temperature control is down in all lower sectors. He looked back. It's going to get cold. Really cold. The alarm stopped suddenly. Now there was only the sound of crying children and breaking machines. A voice came through speakers in the ceiling, speaking in many languages at once. The message was simple. Environmental systems were being moved to important areas. Lower sectors would get very cold. All workers who weren't needed should go to the upper levels. We need to move them, Ura said. She was holding a small reptile child wrapped around her arm. Take them somewhere warm. Hey, one shook her head. There's no room. The upper sectors are already too full. That's why these children are down here. Daesung could already feel the temperature dropping. His breath made small clouds in the air. The children felt it too. They started huddling together, looking for warmth. The furry ones formed tight balls. The reptile ones pressed against the heat lamps, even though the lamps were flickering and dying. How cold will it get? Daesung asked. Taejin checked the screen again. Below freezing. maybe much lower if the backup systems don't work. They all understood what that meant. These children couldn't survive that kind of cold. Their bodies were too small, too weak. Adult aliens could handle harsh temperatures with their thick skin or special abilities, but younglings needed warmth to live. The rations, HFY said suddenly. We need to feed them. They'll need energy to stay warm. They move fast, giving out cold ration packs to every child in the room. Daesung had spent yesterday testing the rations using the station's medical database. Most of the food was safe for multiple species, even if it wasn't perfect nutrition. It would keep them alive. The children took the silver packages with small hands, paws, claws, and talons. Most had never seen human food before. They turned the packages over, sniffing them, tapping them, unsure what to do. Daesung opened one pack to show them. Like this. You just tear here and eat. He took a bite of the bland food bar inside. It tasted like nothing, but it would give them calories and warmth. Slowly, the children began opening their packages. Some ate right away, too hungry to wait. But Daesung noticed something strange. A group of children near the back wall weren't eating. They had opened their packages but were just holding them. Staring at the food with confused faces, he walked closer. There was Vix, the small silver fox creature. Next to him was a bird-like child with soft white feathers and a reptile youngling with shiny blue scales. They each held their food but didn't eat. What's wrong? Daesung asked gently. Is the food bad? Vix looked up at him with those big blue eyes. The creature made a small whimpering sound. Then Vix did something unexpected. The small creature pressed the cold food pack against its chest. It tucked the pack under one paw. The three tails wrapped around it, covering it completely. The bird child, Kale, did the same. She tucked the package under her small wing, pressing it against her chest. The reptile one, Miru, put the package on the warmest part of the floor near a dying heat lamp and curled its body around it. What are they doing? Dura asked, coming to stand next to Daesung. HFY came closer too, watching carefully. Her eyes went wide. They're warming it. They're warming the food before eating it? Daesung felt something twist in his chest. But they're already cold. They need to eat now to make body heat. It's instinct, HFY said softly. Think about it. In nature, parents would warm food for younglings. They'd chew it, heat it, prepare it. These children are doing what they were taught. What feels right to them? Her voice cracked. They're trying to make the cold food warm because that's what safety feels like. They watched as more children began doing the same thing. Small beings pressed the food packs against their bodies, held them in their mouths without chewing, placed them near their warmest body parts. They were giving their own warmth to the food, even as they shook from the cold. Daesung knelt in front of Vix again. The small creature was shaking now. Its silver fur was puffed up against the cold, but it still held the ration pack close, warming it with everything it had. You don't have to do that, Daesung said quietly. Humans eat cold food. It's okay. You can eat it now. Vix looked at him, then at the package, then back. The creature's ears folded back with uncertainty. Daesung took his own ration pack. He opened it and took a big bite of the cold food bar, making sure Vix could see. See? Cold is fine for humans. You can eat it cold too. It's safe. But Vix didn't eat. Instead, the creature moved closer to Daesung. Those small paws reached out and pressed the slightly warmed package against Daesung's hand. Vix was giving the warmth back to him. The gesture broke something inside Daesung. This small, scared, freezing creature was trying to share its warmth with him. After losing everything, after being left behind on a cold station in space, this child still wanted to care for others. Around the room, other children were doing the same. Kale had come to HFY and was trying to tuck her warmed ration pack into HFY's jacket. Miru had brought its package to Taejin, chirping softly and pushing it toward him. Small beings that had warmed their food were now trying to share that warmth with the humans who fed them. They think we're cold too, Burra said, wiping her eyes. They're trying to take care of us. The temperature kept dropping. Frost started forming on the metal walls. The children's breath came out in thick clouds, but they kept pressing close to the humans, kept trying to share the little warmth they had. Daesung made a decision. He stood up and looked at his team. The rations we have left. All of them. We give everything to the children. But those were supposed to last us a month, Taejin said. If we give it all away, then we'll find something else. Daesung's voice was firm. We're human. We can handle cold food. We can handle less food. They can't. Haewon nodded right away. I'm in. Beora smiled, even though she was shivering. Obviously. Taejin was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded too. Okay, let's do it. They spent the next hour giving out every ration pack they had. They showed the children that warming the food wasn't necessary, that eating it cold was fine, that it would help their bodies fight the freezing air. Slowly, the children began to understand. They began to eat, but even as they ate, they stayed close to the humans. Vix wouldn't leave Daesung's side. Kale sat on Haewon's shoulder. Miru wrapped around Taejin's legs. Dozens of other small beings pressed against them, looking for warmth and safety. As the temperature dropped more, the children began to sleep. Their bellies were full for the first time in days. They slept in piles, sharing body heat. The 4 humans sat among them, acting as sources of warmth and protection. Daesung sat with his back against the cold wall. Vix was curled in his lap, sleeping. He watched the other sleeping children. They had so little. They had lost so much. But they still tried to share what they had. They still tried to care. That was something worth protecting. Something worth freezing for. The night grew deeper. The cold got worse. But in that room, surrounded by sleeping children from many different worlds, Daesung felt something warm growing in his chest. It was purpose. It was connection. It was the beginning of something that would change everything. Morning came but brought no warmth. The lights turned on throughout the station, but the nursery stayed cold. Ice had formed on the walls during the night, creating patterns that might have been pretty under different circumstances. Now they just reminded everyone how close to death they were living. Daesung hadn't slept. None of them had. They spent the night moving around, making sure the children stayed warm, checking temperatures, moving blankets. His body hurt and his fingers felt numb, but he couldn't stop. Every time he tried to rest, he would see a child shivering and he would move again. Vix had stayed in his lap all night. The small creature's 3 tails were wrapped tight around itself. Sometimes Daesung felt small shakes run through the furry body. But Vix was alive. They were all alive. That was what mattered. Haewon sat down next to him with 2 cups of hot liquid. The station's drink machines had given them something that barely counted as tea, but it was warm. Drink this, she said, pushing a cup into his hands. You're no good to anyone if you freeze. Daesung took the cup. The warmth spread through his fingers. How many are sick? 3 of the reptile younglings have breathing problems. Beora is with them now. Hey, one drank from her own cup and made a face at the taste. Taejin went to the upper sectors to demand more supplies. I don't think he'll get anywhere, but we had to try. They sat quietly for a moment, watching the children wake up. Kale stretched her wings, shaking her white feathers. Miru unwound from its sleeping position and blinked slowly in the dim light. Others began moving, making the soft sounds of younglings greeting a new day. They warmed the food again this morning, Haewon said quietly. I watched them. Even though we showed them they don't have to. Even though they understand humans can eat cold food. They still do it. Daesung looked down at Vix, who was now awake and watching him with those bright blue eyes. Why? I think it's their way of caring. Hey, one put down her cup. They lost their parents, their homes, everything familiar. But they remember the rituals. The small acts of care that made them feel safe. Warming food was something their families did. So they keep doing it. Maybe for themselves. Maybe for us. Hey, one smiled sadly. We gave them our food? So now they want to give us their warmth. It's an exchange. It's how they show love. The word hung in the air, love. Was that what this was? These small beings from different worlds showing love the only way they knew how. Daesung thought about Earth, about humanity's strange history. Humans had turned wolves into dogs, not for food but for friendship. They raised orphaned animals from different species. They adopted children from other countries and cultures, treating them as their own. Humans had this broken instinct that made them care for things that weren't their family. Other species in the galaxy found it strange, wasteful, but it was what made humans human. We're going to run out of food in 3 days, Daesung said. The rations are almost gone, I know. The station won't send more. They made that clear. I know that too. Daesung looked at her. We might have to make choices soon. About who gets fed first. Hey, one met his eyes. We feed the children first, always. That's not a choice. That's a promise. Before Daesung could respond, Vix made a soft sound and climbed out of his lap. The small creature walked to where the remaining ration packs were stored. Vix picked one up carefully in its mouth and brought it back to Daesung, dropping it at his feet. You need to eat too, Haewon said, watching. You can't care for them if you collapse. Daesung picked up the package. It was slightly warm. Vix had warmed it before bringing it to him. The gesture made his throat feel tight. He opened the package and broke the food bar in half. He ate one half and offered the other to Vix. The creature took it gently and ate, never looking away from Daesung. Over the next few days, a routine formed. The humans would give out what food they had. The children would eat, though many still warmed the food first. Then the children would play as much as they could in the cold space. They would tell stories to each other in languages the humans couldn't understand. They would draw pictures on the frosted walls. They would huddle together for warmth and comfort, and slowly something changed. The children stopped seeing the humans as outsiders. They began looking for them not just for food and warmth, but for comfort. When nightmares came, they would climb into the humans' laps. When they were scared, they would press against human legs. When they played, they would try to include the humans in their games. Kao began bringing, one small object she found around the station. Shiny pieces of metal, colored wires, broken circuit boards. In her species' culture, giving gifts meant family bonding. She was telling Haewon that she belonged. Meru, who hadn't made a sound since coming to the station, began making soft chirping noises when Taejin was near. The reptile species talked through sound frequencies. Chirping meant contentment, safety, the sound younglings made when their parents were close. Other children did similar things. They stopped seeing the humans as strange aliens. They saw protectors. They saw family. Tae-Jin came back from the upper sectors with bad news. The station administrators refused to send more supplies. The nursery was low priority. If the humans wanted to leave and go to warmer sectors, they could. But no more resources would go to the children. They basically said we're wasting time on non-essential people, Tae-Jin said angrily. They called these children non-essential. Beo-ra, who had been checking the sick younglings, looked up with fury in her eyes. How can children be non-essential? Because they're not the right species, Haewon said bitterly. Because their families can't pay. Because they're inconvenient. Daesung felt anger burning in his chest. But anger wouldn't feed the children. It wouldn't keep them warm. He needed to think. We have enough food for 2 more days if we're careful, he said. After that, we'll have to get creative. The station has gardens in the upper sectors. Maybe we can negotiate access. Or we can contact other human stations and see if they can spare anything. That could take weeks, Tae-Jin said. Then we buy them weeks. Daesung stood up, careful not to disturb Vix, who had fallen asleep against his leg. We didn't come here to watch children starve. We came here to help. So that's what we do. That night, as the children slept, the 4 humans sat together and made plans. They would contact Earth directly, going around the station administrators. They would reach out to other species aid organizations. They would find a way. Vix woke up and walked over to Daesung. The small creature carried something in its mouth. It was one of the last ration packs. Vix had been saving it. The creature pressed it into Daesung's hands and made a soft sound. Then Vix did something it hadn't done since coming to the station. It spoke. The words were in its own language, translated by a small device on its collar that Daesung hadn't noticed before. For you. Because you stay. Daesung felt tears in his eyes. He picked up Vix and held the small, warm body close. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered. I promise. Around the room, other children were waking. They watched. Then, one by one, they began bringing things to the humans. Small treasures they had saved. Pieces of food they had hidden. Scraps of cloth they had used as blankets. They were giving everything they had because the humans had given everything first. Hey, one started crying quietly. Laura covered her face with her hands. Taejin turned away, but his shoulders shook. They had come to this station to deliver supplies. To do a job? But somewhere along the way, it became something more. These children stopped being assignments. They became family. And family was worth everything. The message reached the upper sectors within hours. Someone had recorded Daesung and his team giving their last rations to the children. Someone had captured the moment when the younglings brought their saved food back to share with the humans. The video spread through the station's network like fire. People reacted in different ways. Some saw it as proof of human stupidity. Wasting resources on other species made no sense. Others saw it differently. They saw sacrifice. They saw something the galaxy had forgotten during the chaos of war. The Velcrin administrator, Thorin, came to the nursery on the third day. His crystal body glowed with colors that the translation device turned into words showing displeasure. Explain yourself, the device said as Thorin stood over Daesung. You were given supplies for human use? You had no right to give them away. Daesung stood his ground, even though Thorin was nearly 3 feet taller. The children were hungry. We had food. The choice was simple. Simple? Thorin's lights flashed red. Your species is new here. You have few resources. Yet you waste them on offspring that aren't your responsibility. This makes no sense. Maybe not to you, Daesung said. But it makes sense to us. Why? Thorin leaned down, his crystal face close to Daesung's. Explain why humans would hurt themselves for other species. What advantage does this give? Daesung took a breath. He knew this conversation would come. On Earth, humans have a history of caring for things beyond their own kind. We domesticated animals and treated them as family. We raised orphans from different nations. We protected endangered species even when it cost us resources. It's not about advantage. It's about seeing something that needs help and choosing to help it. That is illogical, maybe, but it kept us alive. Daesung pointed around the room. Humans survived because we learned to work together beyond blood ties. We built societies where strangers helped strangers, where someone else's child was still worth protecting. It made us weak in some ways, but it also made us strong. Thorin's lights pulsed in patterns Daesung couldn't read. You are aware this violates rules. You could lose your position, then remove me. But find someone else to care for these children first. Before Thorin could respond, another voice spoke from the doorway. It was deep and rumbling like rocks grinding together. The human speaks truth. Everyone turned. A massive figure stood in the entrance. She was covered in thick brown fur, easily 8 feet tall, with powerful arms and a face like Earth's bears. A Korthan elder, based on the silver streaks in her fur. Yura, Thorin said, his lights shifting to surprised yellow. What brings you to the lower sectors? The Korthan elder walked into the room. Her heavy steps made the floor shake slightly. Children scattered in fear, then slowly came back out to watch her. She moved slowly, carefully, trying not to frighten them. I heard about the humans and their choices, Yura said. Her voice was gentle despite being deep. I came to see for myself. She looked around the room. At the children from dozens of species. at the four exhausted humans trying to care for them all. Her eyes, dark and smart, took in everything. My people know the value of such choices, Yura continued. 3 generations ago, the Korthan people faced extinction. A plague killed most of our young. We survived only because other clans adopted our orphan cubs. Bloodlines mixed. Pure genetics were abandoned for survival. We lived because we learned what these humans already know. That family is not just blood. It is choice. Thorin's lights flickered uncertainly. That is one example. It does not prove, it proves that compassion has practical value, Yura interrupted. The humans see what we forgot. That the young of any species deserve protection. That caring for the vulnerable strengthens all of us. She knelt down slowly, making herself smaller. Vix approached her carefully, 3 tails twitching. Yura extended a massive paw. After a moment, Vix sniffed it. The small fox creature made a soft sound and pressed against her fur. Yura smiled. This little one has chosen to trust again. Because the humans showed him that trust could be rewarded. That is not weakness, Administrator. That is strength. Thorin stood silent for a long moment. His lights cycled through colors too quickly to translate. Finally, they settled on pale blue. I will report this to the council, he said. But I will not remove the humans from their position. For now, he left without another word. His crystal footsteps echoed down the corridor. Yura stayed. She sat on the floor, her massive form taking up considerable space. She let the children come to her. They came slowly at first, and with more confidence. They touched her fur, climbed on her arms, made sounds of curiosity and wonder. The galaxy is broken, Yura said quietly to Daesung. War has made us forget basic decency. We focus on survival of our own kind. We forgot that cooperation between species is how life flourishes. Will the council listen? Daesung asked. Some will, others will not. Yura gently picked up a small reptile youngling that had climbed onto her shoulder. But change does not come from councils. It comes from individuals making difficult choices. That night, everything changed. The alarms came without warning. Critical system failure? Not just the environmental controls this time. The main power grid. Life support. Everything. The station's emergency lights turned on, painting everything red. A voice echoed through every corridor. All non-essential sectors would lose life support within the hour. Temperature would drop to lethal levels. All workers should evacuate to the central core immediately. The nursery was classified as non-essential. Evacuation orders flooded the communication systems. Shuttles were being prepared. The central core could support the refugees, but there wasn't room for everyone. Priority would go to species that had paid for protection. To adults who could work. To those deemed essential. Not to orphan children in the lower sectors. Haewon looked at Daesung with panic in her eyes. We need to move them now. Where? Taejin demanded. They made it clear. There's no room for them. Then we make room, Thora said fiercely. We carry them if we have to. But they all knew the truth. There were over 80 children, 4 humans, and less than an hour before the cold would kill anyone left behind, Daesung made a decision. We don't evacuate. Everyone stared at him. We stay here, he continued. We use every blanket, every heat source, every resource we have. We huddle together and we survive the 48 hours until they restore power. That's insane, Taejin said. The temperature will drop way below freezing. We'll all die, maybe, but we'll die together. Daesung looked at each of them. Or we can try to survive together. Humans can handle wider temperature ranges than most species. Our bodies adapt. If we put ourselves in the center and surround ourselves with the children, share our body heat, rotate positions, we might make it. Might isn't good enough, Haewon said. But her voice was uncertain. It's all we have. Daesung turned to Yura, who had been listening silently. Will you help us? The Korthan elder stood slowly. I will. And I will make sure others know what the humans chose to do here. She placed a massive paw on Daesung's shoulder. The galaxy needs to see this. As the evacuation orders continued to blare, the four humans began preparing. They gathered every blanket, every thermal cover, every piece of cloth. They pulled the children into the center of the room, creating a tight huddle. The humans positioned themselves as anchors, their bodies providing core warmth. Vix pressed against Daesung's chest. Kale tucked herself under Haewon's arm. Miru coiled around Taejin's waist. Dozens of other small beings piled on, around, and between them, the lights flickered and died. The heat disappeared. The cold came like a living thing, creeping through every crack and seemed dot, and in the darkness, surrounded by frightened children from a dozen different worlds, four humans made a promise. They would not leave. They would not abandon. They would stay until the warmth returned, no matter what it cost. The first hour was the hardest. The temperature dropped so fast that Daesung could feel it in his bones. His breath came out in thick clouds that froze in the air. Ice formed on the walls and ceiling, creating a crystal shell around them. The children were terrified. They cried out in languages the humans couldn't understand, but fear sounded the same everywhere. Hey, one sang softly, old lullabies in Korean that her mother had sung to her. Leora told stories, her voice steady despite the cold. Taejin counted out loud. Giving the children something to focus on besides their fear, Daesung held Vix close to his chest, feeling the small body shaking violently. The three tails wrapped around his arm, looking for any warmth they could find. He tucked the creature inside his jacket and felt the shaking slowly decrease. "Talk to me," Haewon said from somewhere in the darkness. "I need to hear voices. What should I say?" Daesung's words came out shaky. "Anything, everything, tell me about Earth." So Daesung talked. He told them about summers in Seoul, about winter festivals, about the smell of street food and the sound of rain on city streets. He told them about his mother's cooking, about his father's terrible jokes, about growing up in a world that had survived its own wars and rebuilt itself stronger. The others joined in. Hey, one described beaches she had visited. Leora talked about mountains she wanted to climb. Taejin spoke about books he loved, stories of hope and survival that felt important right now. The children listened. Some understood the words through translation devices. Others just heard the rhythm and tone. But it helped. The fear in their sounds began to fade, replaced by curiosity. By interest. By the beginning of calm. Hours passed. Daesung lost track of time in the darkness. His body ached from staying in one position. His fingers and toes had gone numb hours ago. But he couldn't move. Vix was finally sleeping warm and safe inside his jacket. Other children pressed against him, trusting him to keep them alive. He couldn't fail them. "I can't feel my legs," Burra whispered. "We need to rotate positions," Taejin said. "Slowly, we move one person at a time to the center where it's warmest, let them recover, then switch." They began rotating. It was awkward and difficult with so many children clinging to them, but they managed. When it was Daesung's turn in the center, surrounded by small warm bodies, he felt sensation return to his limbs and painful tingles. It hurt, but it meant he was still alive. Still functioning. "How long has it been?" "Hey," one asked. 10 hours, Taejin replied. He was keeping track on his device, one of the few things still working. 38 hours to go. The number felt impossible. They had already been through so much, and they weren't even a quarter done. But there was no choice. They had made their decision. They would see it through. More hours crawled by. The children took turns sleeping and waking. When they were awake, they pressed close to the humans, looking for comfort and warmth. When they slept, they made soft sounds, dreams playing out behind closed eyes. Vix woke and looked up at Daesung. The small creature's breath made tiny clouds in the freezing air. Vix made a soft sound and licked Daesung's chin. It was warm. The small tongue was warm. "Thank you," Daesung whispered, "for staying warm for me." Other children began doing small things to help. Kale used her wings to block the worst of the cold drafts. Miru made body heat by shivering in a controlled way and let other children press against its scales. Furry younglings puffed up their coats and created insulating barriers. They were working together. Different species, different worlds, different ways of surviving, but all focused on one goal. Stay alive until the warmth returned. 20 hours in, Baura started showing signs of hypothermia. Her speech became slurred, her movements sluggish. They moved her to the center immediately, piling children on top of her, using their combined body heat to bring her temperature back up. It took 3 hours of careful warming before she was responsive again. "I'm sorry," she mumbled when she could finally speak clearly. "Don't be," HFY said. "We all take turns being vulnerable. That's how we survive this." 30 hours in, they were all struggling. Daesung's thoughts felt slow and fuzzy. He had to force himself to stay awake, to keep checking the children, to make sure everyone was still breathing. Taejin had taken over most of the organizing, his voice steady as he called out position changes and status checks. The children were exhausted too. But they were still alive. All of them. Every single small being that had been left behind was still breathing, still warm enough to survive. 36 hours in, Daesung heard something. A sound that didn't belong in their frozen tomb. He lifted his head, trying to identify it. "Do you hear that?" "Hey," one asked. They all listened. There it was again. A mechanical hum. Getting closer, the door to the room opened, bringing a rush of warmer air. Emergency lights flickered on. Daesung had to close his eyes against the sudden brightness. When he opened them again, he saw medical teams flooding in, carrying thermal blankets and heating equipment. "We have survivors," someone shouted. "They're all alive." The medical teams moved quickly, carefully separating the humans and children, checking vital signs, wrapping everyone in warming blankets. Daesung tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. Someone caught him before he fell. "Easy," a medic said. "You have severe hypothermia. You need treatment." "The children," Daesung managed to say. "Check them first. We're checking everyone." The medic guided him to a stretcher. "You saved them. All of them. Every single child survived." As they carried him out of the room, Daesung saw Yura standing in the corridor. The Korthan Elder was surrounded by other aliens, all of them watching the rescue with expressions he couldn't read. "You did it," Yura said as he passed. "The galaxy is watching. They all know what humans chose to do here." The next few days were a blur. Daesung and his team spent time in the medical bay, recovering from hypothermia and exhaustion. The children were in a nearby room, being treated and warmed slowly to avoid shocking their systems. When Daesung was finally allowed to visit, he found the nursery transformed. It had been moved to a warmer sector. New equipment lined the walls. Fresh supplies filled the storage areas. And most importantly, there were other caretakers now. Volunteers from multiple species, all wanting to help. Vix ran to him the moment he entered, making happy sounds and wrapping all 3 tails around his legs. Kale flew to his shoulder. Miru coiled around his feet. Other children crowded close, touching him, making sure he was real. "They thought you had left them," HFY said, walking over with a smile. She looked better, healthier, though still tired. "They've been waiting for you." "I told them I wouldn't leave," Daesung said, picking up Vix and holding the small creature close. "And you didn't." She gestured around the room. "None of us did. And now look what happened." The station's attitude had changed. The video of the humans staying with the children had spread across the galactic network. Species that had ignored the refugee station were now sending supplies. Administrators who had called the children non-essential were facing questions. The Velcrin Council had issued a formal apology and given significant resources to the nursery, but the biggest change was happening slowly, quietly. Other refugees were beginning to help with the children. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Because they had seen what the humans did, and it reminded them of something they had forgotten. That caring for the young was everyone's responsibility? That species barriers didn't matter when a child needed help. A few weeks later, Daesung sat in an office facing a galactic court official. The official was reviewing documents on a screen, occasionally glancing up at Daesung with an unreadable expression. This is highly irregular, the official said. Cross-species adoption is rarely approved. I understand, Daesung replied. But I want to adopt Vix properly, legally. You realize this creates a precedent? Other species will want to adopt outside their genetics. Good. Daesung leaned forward. These children deserve families. If their own species can't or won't take them, then someone else should be allowed to try. The official was silent for a moment. I've received similar applications from the other humans. Hey, one wants to adopt 2 reptile younglings. Tae-jin and Be-ora filed joint adoption for 4 children of different species. We're a package deal, Daesung said. We did this together. We'll continue together. The official made a gesture that might have been a sigh. Very well. I'm approving your application, and I'm recommending that the Council establish new rules for cross-species adoption using humanity as the template. Daesung felt something tight in his chest loosen. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You'll have to attend hearings, submit to evaluations, prove you can meet each species' specific needs. It won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is easy. The official made a sound that might have been laughter. You humans are strange creatures. But perhaps that's what the galaxy needs right now. Strange creatures who do impossible things. Daesung left the office and returned to the nursery. Vix ran to him immediately, and Daesung picked up the small creature. How would you like to come home with me? He asked. Vix made a happy sound and pressed close to his chest, 3 tails wagging. The answer was clear. That evening, as the children settled down for sleep, Daesung stood with Haewon, Tae-jin, and Be-ora watching their new family.